Okay, moving on. It's been another long week in Ukraine. On Monday, Russian rockets hit 10 cities across the country in Ukraine, including the capital of Kyiv, after Ukrainian forces took out the key Crimea Bridge, which is a link between Crimea and Russia.
And joining us now is the founder of the Special Operations Association of America, Special Operations veteran Daniel Elkins. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So you were in Ukraine on Monday when these attacks took place. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to start off by noting that this is a terrorist regime that we're fighting. The very definition of terrorism is striking civilian infrastructure across the entirety of the nation. And while we were there, we witnessed the aftermath of war crimes against humanity. Several hundred apartment buildings were destroyed. We spoke to survivors of violence, of torture, of assault. And these are the examples of how the Russian military are engaging in war against a sovereign nation.
Based on your experience serving our country, and thank you for that, sir, can Ukraine win this war based on what you're seeing?
I absolutely believe they can. You know, while we were there, we were working with a group called Ukraine Rises, a Ukrainian NGO, and we had the opportunity to engage with senior national security officials across the Ukrainian government and the armed forces. And we witnessed firsthand the accountability process that's been deployed to track all weapon systems, including those by the United States. You know, Ukraine is putting a process of control measures into the purchase and distribution of these weapons, and they're regularly engaging stakeholders here in the United States. And this lethal aid is important for us to win.
Yeah, Daniel, you talked about how you spoke with people, you witnessed the aftermath. What are they saying to you? Because we're over 200 days into this war. Again, what happened on Monday, horrific. Talk to us about some of the stories they're telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we were touring one village, we came to spoke with a woman who had just come back with her daughter to see their building near Kyiv, which was destroyed. And unfortunately, the rest of her family was killed in an airstrike, along with many of her neighbors. These are just some of the stories that need to be publicized. Look, this is a regime, like I said, that is open to terrorism,
right.
And we must deal with that because this is assault on sovereignty and democracy worldwide.
And Daniel, it goes without saying, we're certainly not pro-Russia here, but we've got a lot of problems stateside. In the U.S., 26 days away from really important elections. We, so far, have spent more than any other EU, NATO country. We've spent, by one estimate, $17 billion in Ukraine. Clearly, it's not deterring Vladimir Putin. How concerned are you by this notion that Putin has basically been backed into a corner, which makes him more dangerous, which is why we keep hearing more about nuclear weapons?
Yeah, well, to answer the first part of your question, we found no evidence of corruption and can personally attest to the detailed process of accountability and oversight, which I think is really important for the American people to understand that that process exists. Now to your second point, the possibility of a nuclear engagement. We assess the likelihood of that to be extremely low. I'm not a politician or a statesman. I'm a military strategist. And, I have been really studying this situation for many years. I worked out of the embassy in Kyiv 2019 and 20 and have been back for several trips recently.
Right.
And I think the use of nuclear weapons would mean catastrophic effects for Russia instantaneously, and the regime would instantaneously collapse.
Wow.
Yeah. Daniel, we've talked to members of the Ukrainian parliament, and they've been telling us they still need more. They need more weapons. What have you seen on the ground? Do they have the weapons they need to fight this war?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question to ask. And the way we look at it is from a tactical standpoint. So what happened in Syria and the general carpet bombing that the Russian forces used there, and why, was because there was no air defense. And luckily, due to the support from the United States and others, we have air superiority. And Russia hasn't been able to advance the way it would want to. So I think continuing to support with air defense is very important. I know Congressman McCall is suggesting additional use of long-range artillery, which we support this. But right now, it's important that the international community recognizes that this support is not just for Ukraine, but it's for the sovereignty of the Western democracy at large.
Right. Well, Daniel Elkins, thank you so much. We thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Wake Up America, only on Newsmax.